Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Uniquely Me with Simone Stewart. Here on the channel, we share the stories of women who have been through trauma and struggles, but we don't focus on that. We move to look at their triumphs. And so this week, I have a Jamaican living overseas who has quite a unique story. Yes, it's similar to ones we've heard on this channel, but every woman's story is so different, yet so unique. And like I always say here, uniquely me is uniquely you. So guys, it's Saturday evening. Get your popcorn, get your juice, and come back. We are going to look at the whole business of the lies I tell. See you soon.
Uniquely me is uniquely you. Balancing the different hats of life, achieving all your goals in the name of Christ. Uniquely me is uniquely you. You can do anything. With the S on your chest, you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. You are a winner and you're an overcomer. You can be all things to Christ who gives you strength. Yeah, you are a fighter. You're so determined. Uniquely me is uniquely you.
So welcome back, guys, to Uniquely Me with Simone Stewart. So good to have you. But guys, help me make welcome Marlene Hickman. It is so good to have you, Marlene. How are you?
Hi, Simone. Thank you for having me on your show. Appreciate it. You have a very good show, by the way.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, I am humbled every time I hear it. Because the truth is, Marlene, every time I go into recording, I keep wondering, am I enough? Do I have what it takes to do it? So it's always a humbling experience. And then the truth is too that I'm trying to create a platform, not for me, but for women. Because the stories of our women, Marlene, is so, some of them leaves you in tears, for want of a better word. And the thought that so many of our women are enduring trauma, they are enduring abuse, they are enduring loss and lack and all the different things, and they're thriving, they're thriving, they're triumphing. That gives me greatest joy.
Good.
So Marlene, tell us a little about you. Where are you from? I know you're from Jamaica. I did hear something about Westwood, so I'd love to hear from you first.
Okay, so I was born in Kingston to a teenage mother, 17-year-old mother who decided the best thing for her and for me at the time was to take me to St. Anne. Mm-hmm. So I actually was raised in Brownstown, St. Anne, Jamaica.
Oh.
And I grew up in Brownstown and then I attended Westwood High School as a teenager.
Mm-hmm. Wow, you've been around, girl.
Yes.
Awesome. So what was life like, Marlene? What did you want to become? And I want to say too, especially in light of the fact when you discovered that, your mom was a teenage mom, how did that impact you and your thoughts growing up?
So I didn't think much about my mother growing up because I grew up with, the very young age, I heard I was about 2 years old when I went to live with my father, who later first it was with his mother, which is my grandmother, the paternal grandmother. And then from there, mm-hmm. It was to live with my father and his wife. My father got married when I was about 4 years old. So then I went to live with them. So technically, I didn't even know the dynamics of, I didn't have a mother or whatever the story was. I just knew that I was in a household with mother and father. Mm-hmm. So that's the way that I viewed it. And, it was a stepmother that raised me. There was another stepchild in the house. And then later on, my stepmother gave birth to 3 other children. So that's the lifestyle that I knew.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Normalcy. It's something I heard a previous interview you spoke of. Normalcy up to age 10. What was that normalcy? And I'm saying that, I'm zooming into that because after that, what life became for you was not normalcy. So explain to us what was normalcy prior to age 10.
Okay. So before age 10, for me, life was normal. And I will always express that normalcy to any child is what you grow up knowing. So me growing up in this household was a father that always came to my room at nights, always came to my bed at nights after, like I took a shower. He would always crawl into the bed at nights and have me remove my clothes and touched me or had me touched him. That was my normal. I knew nothing to measure that by. So that's what happened in my household. So for me, I thought that's what happened in everyone else's household.
Yeah.
That was my normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I don't mean to cut you, but I want to say to you, I look now at just my child. I have a 7-year-old, and I look at how she responds to us. That child is so innocent.
Yeah.
That child is not thinking that anything at all that is being done to them is abnormal, is wrong, or anything of the sort. And I think that's what, you get the feeling that's what makes others take advantage of them.
Absolutely. And I think, I grew up in Jamaica at a time when you had one TV channel. I don't know if people remembered how censored Jamaica was. Like certain things you did not play on the radio, certain things you never saw on TV. So I was in that very enclosed world where you don't know, like nowadays you're exposed to so much more. Yeah. A young child nowadays sees, people having sex and all these things. I was never exposed. My world was not like that as a child. Yeah. So for me, everything, and I want to make this very clear that people need to understand that a normalcy for a child will always be what's happening in that household.
Yes.
Until later on, when they're exposed to other things, then you're realizing that's not the norm. And for me, I had an older cousin that would visit the house, and she would talk about the dogs. There's a Jamaican word, frig. Mm-hmm. I don't know if anyone remember that word, but growing up, like, everybody would say, oh, the dog's a freak. The dog's a freak, that quotation.
Yeah.
Word. So, I knew the action, what the dogs did. And for me, never in my wildest did I know that frig really was related to, the same act, the sex of act that humans beings did. Until I was 10 years old, I was at Brownstone Primary School. Mm-hmm. And there's always those children that know more than you do.
Yeah.
And it so happened that there was this girl in class that we were sitting at the edge. I never forget that moment. I was swinging my legs back and forth. And she told me that the teacher's husband, whatever, I'm sure if people could think back, they probably figured what was going on back then. But for me, all I remembered was that she saw the teacher's husband was arrested for frigging off his daughter. Mm-hmm. And I looked at her and it finally occurred, frig. And then I said, the dogs did that. And then you can't imagine how that totally destroyed me, because all of a sudden I realized that I was doing something that I could get arrested for, that I could go to prison for. That's the way that I view it. Really? I didn't even view that the guilty party, or, that I was being taken advantage of. I just realized that I was partaking in an act that would that would make me go to prison.
Yeah.
And once I realized that, like, my whole world changed.
Yes.
And this was, at Brownstone Primary School. And I remember if I was an artist, I could draw that moment because it stayed with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd love for you to share with us, how did that day, at the day after, how did life change? Especially with that new discovery. After that, when your father came to your room, what happened, or in terms of your mind, your thoughts, your actions?
So after that, the first thing I tried to do, I started withdrawing within myself, because then I realized that this was something that should not have been happening. So later on, my cousin showed up at the house. She would, visit occasionally. And next time she showed up, I said that to her. Yeah. Because I didn't know, what else to do, because she was older, and just being an older child, she was maybe about 6 years older or so, but you figure like she was a teenager. Right. So when I said that to her, she said to tell the stepmother. Mm-hmm. And of course I went, because my older cousin said, tell the stepmother. And that's what I did. And that night, I was awakened by a water hose beating me like crazy, like I'll never forget too. Like I woke up, like just, the water hose hitting me all over.
Yeah.
And I got, like such a terrible beating with that green, those old Jamaican green water hose.
Yes, yes, yes.
I got a beating with that. Like nobody said anything. All I know was that my father woke me up that night and beat the daylights out of me. And I knew to stay quiet after. I mean, I still sleep today with my hand over my head like this, protecting my head. Because once you've gone through that, you never forget that moment. So this is my way of making sure that if I get hit,
yes,
I protect myself. But yes, so that was what I learned.
yeah.
And then I realized, once that happened, then I realized that I was basically like targeted, basically. So it was a matter of like, I had to do like other stuff. Like I was told if he's doing, oh, you come and help me, like lift very heavy things. And when I just didn't have the strength. I was very thin growing up, very, very petite, very, very small child. Like, my weight at when I left Jamaica at 17, I was under 100 pounds. So you could just imagine how small I was growing up. But then I was always beaten.
Yeah.
And all these things growing up, but it was a part of my life. So that's all I knew. And like I said, I had nothing to measure it by.
Marlene, when you spoke to your mother, your stepmother, what did she say or do? Because what did she say or do?
She didn't say anything. She just stared at me. And I'm guessing, because, I'm a child and I was fast asleep. I'm guessing when he came home, she told him. And that's the reason I got the beating with the water hose. Mm-hmm. But it was never talked about again.
Did he ever try to molest you again after that?
Yes, I was molested all the way until I ran away at 17 years old, because basically, the water hose taught me to be quiet and it was accepted. What was interesting in my household around that time was that the stepmother in question, this is somebody that's very, very successful too, and which is interesting. Yeah. But the stepmother got her own room. We had that kind of a house where she was able to move into her own room, and she did. Yeah. So basically she would move into she lived in her own room and would close her door at night. So
left you exposed.
You could just imagine.
Yeah.
My father did not share the same bedroom.
Yeah.
And I knew a part of that had to do with just stepping back so that he could do whatever he wanted to do.
Yeah. Were you, the fact that there were other siblings in the house, were you the only one molested, or were they too molested?
So there's other siblings in the house. There's the children within marriage that, I will not discuss anyone else in the household. I just want you to be aware that I can only talk about myself and what I've been through. And it's, in respect of their privacy.
That's fine. At 17, you decided to run away. And, something that we see here, and if you've been following the news, Marlene, you would know that we have, on the news per day, I don't know the numbers, but we have many girls running away. Yes. And we have a culture of saying when a girl runs away, she bad. She won't go take man, for want of a better word. Yes. And there's never anything good that is said. There's never anything that says, oh, maybe the home that she's in is quite abusive, and hence she's looking for a place of safety. You ran away.
Simone,
go ahead.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up. So I used to make like small runaways as a child, but they would always bring me back. Yeah. And, when I was 16, I took off and I ran away to the birth mother whom I had met much later on. Mm-hmm. And when I went to her, she sent me back. So basically, it just showed me, you know, when that happened, I realized, wait a minute, there's nowhere to turn. So you're absolutely right. So then, you know, the family, my family, they, you know, this family in particular started telling people that, you know, we had issues, that I had issues, that I wanted to be with men. That's the reason that I kept running away. When I ran away at 17 years old to New York, do you know that for a very long time, no one knew where I was, but they were, even at that time, they were still telling people up until today. And here we are like 40 years later, and they will still tell people because they don't want to admit the kind of household that I grew up in. They don't, because like I said, it's a pretty successful family.
Yeah.
So they don't want to admit that. So they continue to tell people for years, it's because I'm bad, me they want bad.
Yeah.
And that's the reason. So you're absolutely right. The Jamaican culture is such, unfortunately, that when you have these situations, the girl is often blamed, or the children, not only you know, the girl or the boy, but you're blamed that you want to be bad, because the same thing happened to me.
Yeah.
I was kind of fortunate that, you know, at one point when I ran away in Jamaica, there was a young man who actually, you know, I don't know if he's going to see this video. I don't even remember his name, but I remember, like, in the middle of the night, I tried to run away once. And when I'm walking, you know, I don't know if you know Brownstone, St. Anne, but it's like bush and no street lights. And while walking in the middle of the night in the dark, there's a car, you know, a car light coming up. And there was this young man that I used to see while, you know, while I was at Westwood. And he had a sister that I would sometimes say hi to. And the young man pulled over, realized it was him. He's like, where are you going? Where are you going? And he insisted, he said, it's dark out here. You're going to get hurt. He said, I will not hurt you. Come with me. And this is the first time I'm sharing this story because, you know, so many people don't know my journey, but yes. And, you know, I did go to that young man's house and stayed there for the night because he was right. But, you know, at that age, let's be for real, I'm not mature enough. Even when I took off to New York, the reality is that I wasn't mature enough to know what the world would hold and everything that I would go through.
Yeah.
But all you know is that you have to escape. And running away, Simone, is not the only escape. Like, I tried to kill myself twice. At 14 and at 16, I tried to commit suicide. But as you could tell, that God kept me.
Yes.
For, you know, this moment.
Yes.
But it's not, so people are saying, you know, for all, you know, some of these young people that ran away, you don't know if they're dead somewhere. Yes. Or you don't know what has called them. Because they will, you know, when you're young and you're going through a lot, there's people out there that's going to pretend that they want to help you and hurt you more in the process.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I tell you, there's not an episode that I've had on this channel that I cannot identify with. My sister, she's unfortunate, she's dead, but I now wonder, what was she going through? She lived with my grandparents. She's older than I am. And I remember she ran away at 14. And they went back for her. And I remember my mother and my uncles and my aunt put on some serious beating on her.
Yeah.
When I said they put on some, they gave her some beating. Yeah. And the funny thing is that she ran away the day after they took her home. She never went back. And now I'm looking back, I wonder to myself, what was my sister going through why she chose to run away? And the story was that she was knocking head with this other young lady. And the same thing, you know, they want to take man and the whole works. And I'm now realizing that what may have been taking place there may have been so bad that she had to leave.
Absolutely. So there's a saying that children run away from something to something.
Yes.
And it's, you know, if you look at majority of cases, that's always the case. You're not going to have a child that's happy.
Yeah.
That's not, you know, that's going to take off.
Yes.
Because when a child is happy, you want to stay with happiness.
Yes.
And I think that that's the key from it. If, you know, there's certain, I talk about this too in my book. I talk about there's warning signs there. And I wish, you know, I went to Westwood High School. I think, is it one of the best schools in Jamaica? It absolutely is. However, I do think that at that time, there was a lot of lacking of, in terms of what to look for if children are being molested. And I think also the Jamaican culture, there were a lot of rumors when I was growing up about, about my family circumstances, but no one intervened, no one asked questions because of the secrecy.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it.
It's still happening, Marlene, that depending on who your family is, ain't nobody going to intervene. As a matter of fact, nobody's going to believe, because if your parents are upstanding and that kind of thing, ain't nobody believing that, hey, respectable Mr. John is molesting his daughter, no, it's one of those things that's probably taboo. No, like, if you understand what I mean, nobody.
Absolutely.
And then we have this thing too, that we're not getting into people's business, and we're not with people business, and even when we know and we see it for ourselves, we still go by, we're not getting involved.
Absolutely. So for me, a lot of people, based on, the family structure, and people just did not want to believe it, and just did not want to intervene. I pay a lot of attention to Jamaican media. And what you see in society in Jamaica is that you have very outstanding people that get called out by children that they were molested. And I think what everyone needs to be aware of, and if anyone doesn't take anything else away from anything else that I'm saying, just, you don't know how shameful it is for a child to admit that a relative or, someone in society is having sex with them. It's the most shameful thing that you can think of to admit. That's why so many women do not admit to it. I have all these, older Jamaican women and women from all over the US and in the world in particularly, that are reaching out to me, and they're telling me that, we've never told anyone our story because we're so ashamed and because people will not believe us. But the problem is, it's shameful. So if you're having a child that's telling you it's happening to them, you need to stop and listen. Because children, for the most part, it's the most shameful thing that they're going to tell you. A girl child, and especially boys.
A
lot of boys will not tell you this. So if you have a boy that's because a lot of times children, I worked in child welfare in New York for a very long time. And we're trained that you don't question the child repeatedly. You don't. Because guess what? A child is going to tell one person exactly what happens, and then the child may never mention it again.
You are right.
So, and that's the takeaway.
You are right. My memory goes back. My memory goes back to a classmate in high school, Marlene, and I remember she kept saying to me, she would say stuff like, I'm bathing and my dad would just keep pushing the door and just come into the bathroom. Or my dad keeps treating me like I'm his wife. And she kept saying these things. But I mean, the truth is, Marlene, I could not for the life of me imagine what she was talking about. Only to remember, I remember one day she said to me, she's going to another school. She won't be coming back. And then a few days after that, we heard that the police was at the school. All this time, her dad was molesting her and she had gotten pregnant. And and that thing has not left me, because I keep feeling so responsible, Marlene, for the fact that she was talking to me. She was telling me, but I didn't understand. I didn't know what she was going through. And so it's like, I want to reach out to her one of these days and just to explain to her that I did not understand what she was going through. I can't imagine what she was going through,
Because it's very difficult. Like, it took me, I had all these friends, and until I wrote my book, my friends, except for two of the girls, because one of them, two of them, when I came to New York, later on I connected with them, and they didn't know until I was in my 20s what was going on, because you just can't bring yourself to tell them, because you're ashamed and you keep thinking that people are going to view you that way.
Yeah.
Because, you know, someone's concept of a child being sexually abused by a father, I think, you know, and I think I explained to someone before, and unless you've been abused, you don't know that exactly what it is.
Yes.
It's not consensual sex. It never is.
No.
So it's not two people that are actively having sex. It's never the case, because, you know, in abuse, you're basically laying still and letting this person do whatever it is that they could do to you, and you escape. I mean, I talk about this a lot, and you know, for years I couldn't utter that from my mouth. I couldn't say that because I was always worried that my relationships, you know, how is a man going to view me when he finds out that, you know, my father was molesting me?
Yeah.
So that's been the biggest challenge in all my relationships.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've never gone into a relationship and be truthful. I never have.
Yeah.
How do I explain to someone when you touch me, right, in my sleep and I scream?
Yeah.
Or you do certain things because you love me, and I don't want you near me. I don't want you to touch me because certain things that you say, certain things that you may do, brings me back. And that's what I hear from women, like, you know, from so many of us, not only women, boys too. There's certain males that I'm in contact with, and they've also been sexually abused, and they tell you the same thing. So, you know, it's the damage. And that's what I want, you know, I'm finally able to talk about these things, like, for the, you know, since it was one of those situations between me and God. I struggled with my story because I told God, I'm not going to tell people, because people see a happy me, they see a smiling me, they see so much that God has blessed me to accomplish. And I just didn't want people to know me. You know, I didn't want people to know what I struggle with, what I deal with, and, you know, why my relationships have failed, you know, all those things. But, you know, I do realize as my work, I do work in mental health. And I realize that part of healing is talking about it more so. And the big part of it is the forgiveness piece that I struggled with for years. Because I said, okay, God, I said they should ask me for forgiveness because they destroyed me. And I was on that journey for years and years, and it's another show. But, you know, at some point.
It's funny you're going there, because that's exactly what I wanted to ask. You know, I wanted to ask you how you escaped, but you shared, you know, you left and you went to the US. But over the years, how did you escape those memories? And I don't want to say, because it's not to escape it, it's to deal with it, because this is something that you have to deal with. I listen to you, I hear the pain and that kind of thing. And I'm sure several other women that's going to be watching this episode can identify and saying, oh, the pain is still so real. It still feels like yesterday. How did you go past it to the point where you are now able to talk about it? Yes, you may cry, and, you know, but how did you get to where you are at?
So the first part of it is realizing it was not my fault. For years, I felt it was my fault. I felt that, you know, I was growing up and I was always told that I was never at home. But, you know, Jamaicans, you're pretty, your eyelash long, you're this, you know, they would always tell me those things growing up in Jamaica. So I used to feel that it was my fault that I was being molested. So, you know, I talk about, you know, there were times when people used to say I have very long lashes, and I cut my lashes. I have, you know, as you could see, I have curly, you know, naturally curly hair. So I had very long hair growing up. I had them cut my hair off. So all these things I would do. So because I felt that it was my fault. Maybe if I didn't, you know, maybe if I looked a certain way, no one would notice me. So for years, I just wanted to be, you know, like someone that nobody notices. So that was the first part of it, like coming to America and watching, unfortunately, I must tell you this, watching talk shows and hearing people's story. And because, you know, when it's happening to you, you think you're the only person in the world that this is happening to. So part of, you know, in clinical therapy, we say normalization. So normalization, you know, clinically, it means just understanding that other people have been through the same thing that you've been through. And I learned that when I came to the US. I met one young lady who was from another country, became my best friend, and we were the same age, and her story was similar. Her story was, you know, grandfathers and uncles that raped her. It was more than one person that started at a very young age. And when she told me her story, that was the first time I was able to describe to anyone what my story was and what my life was like in specific incidents of, you know, molestation. So it made a big difference. So normalizing it and praying. I was fortunate that, you know, I had, you know, regardless of what was going on in the household, you know, the stepmother was very much into the church and read the Bible and all those things. So I learned the Bible at an early age. And I had this young lady, I think she's deceased now, named Judy, that used to teach me the Jehovah's Witness, that colorful, remember that colorful children's Jehovah's Witness book? It was a big book. So she used to teach me about the Bible. And for me at that age, the Bible and the concept of God, like I took it so literally, very literally, to the point I do talk about in my book, and I may sound evil, but, you know, I used to pray for my father to die every day. That was my prayer. God, kill him. You know, if he didn't come home, I used to thank God that he was dead, and very disappointed that God didn't listen to my prayer when, you know, when he showed up. So, you know, but, you know, in addition to all that, later on, I trusted in every word that I read in the Bible. And when it tells you, you know, when it talks about that you could overcome, when it tells you to believe in God and trust and believe in him for everything, I believed all those things. So that was the biggest thing I had. So even when I came to New York and I was homeless, even when I was struggling, I used to always have this talk with God. And I said, God, this is, you know, I know you know, I know you because you didn't let me die when, you know, when I tried to attempt suicide so many times. I had such a strong belief in faith in God that I felt that all I had to do was trust in God for everything, and he was going to take me through it. So my deepest, darkest moments, that's what I do. I said, you know, God, give me the strength. God, give me, you know, just multiple parts of the Bible that I learned, and I would repeat to myself. So that's a big part of it. My faith, my hope, that's it. So, and then also, you know, those good people that God put in your life along the way, that they're strangers to you, but they become more than family. Like, you know, I didn't have love, and they love me so much, to them too.
Destiny, help us. So I want to wrap up this portion of it. Have you, since you have started sharing your story worldwide, has the family, and in particular, I don't know if your mom, your stepmom and your dad is still alive, have they reached out to you, or at any point in time did you reach out to them so as to get to complete the healing process?
Yes. So 2014, I finally realized, through the grace of God, and through, there's a young lady, and I will say that, you know, she's Muslim, and you know how God puts people in your life and in their journey. And I told her my story, I trusted her with my story, because I was writing back then. I had started writing, but I was stuck because certain things I just couldn't write about. And she actually shared her story with me and the concepts of forgiveness. I used to, you know, even stopping it, going to church at times because minister was telling me to forgive, and I didn't want to hear that. So, but in this particular situation, I was ready. And she actually explained to me the reason I should forgive. So January of 2014, I actually called my father, and I was able to tell him, you know, I forgive you for everything that you've put me through. And you would be amazed that once I did that, it felt like 1,000 years came off me. And God just started opening doors for me that were shut, like for a very long time, doors I was trying to get into. God just opened them. You would be amazed, like, you know, how strong the power of forgiveness is. It is true. And, you know, when that happened, he didn't, all he said was to me was, take care. He didn't offer an apology. He didn't do any of that. But as far as I'm concerned, my part of it was done.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with forgiveness. Once I said, I forgive you, because I had to forgive him in order for me to move on.
Yeah.
Because I was very, very angry.
Yes.
I have nightmares, and the nightmares were very, very bad, like for years. I still get them now, but not so much as, prior to 2014, because they were nightly and prevented me from sleeping. And it was, those nightmares. But once I did that, the nightmares were not as bad. So that helped. Yeah. And as for the stepmother in particular, I did speak with her in 2019 because I just wanted to get her perspective. Over the years, I am, like I said, I work in mental health. I am an adult now. I've met many, many people in my travels. And my concept, I have a better understanding of why women do not protect the children. And I get that. So I wanted to find out from her, just what was your reason for knowing that this was going on and you didn't protect us, protect me. You didn't protect me from it.
Yeah.
And, her story, and I respect that. She was honest. She said, she had her children that were younger to think about, and that if she didn't, yes. And basically, she said that she knew that if she walked away from her marriage or her relationship, they would not, nothing would, he wouldn't take care of her children that she had in the marriage. And I respect that, because it takes a very strong person to tell me that. And it doesn't, it's interesting. I've never hated her. And the reason I've never hated her, and, a lot of people don't understand this, is because when I was growing up, that was the mother in the household, regardless of how she treated me. Like I said, I had nothing to measure it by.
Yeah.
So, you were still the mother in the home. And, I was a young child and I needed a mother. So even though whatever the relationship was, it wasn't a very strong relationship in general, but at the same time, it was someone that I looked up to, that I admired. It's someone that's very educated, someone that's pretty successful woman in her own right. So in a way, I admire that. Yeah. So that was pretty high standard. So, and I know it's very ambiguous when I say this, because a lot of people will not get that. Yeah. I don't hate her because I've come to understand your reason for not protecting me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. I don't know, Marlene, I just need to breathe a bit first, because just listening to you and just thinking what you had to go through and what so many others are going through.
Yes.
You wrote a book, The Lies I Tell. Yeah, The Lies I Tell. Yes. I'm gonna need you to send me a picture so we can put it up when we're editing. But why did you write that book, and why did you give it that title?
So I wrote the book because for years I always promised myself that if I ever made it through my circumstances, that I would write about it, because I felt that it was a story that people needed to hear. Yeah. And to see resilience and to see how strong my faith is in God. I've been through a lot. This is just, what you're hearing is just on the surface. I mean, once I ran away from Jamaica, a whole nother struggle began in the US, because remember, I ran away at 17 years old. Yeah. So that's why I wrote the book, because it was a situation where God needed me to tell my story, so that way others could hear my story and grow from it. Yeah. And the lies I tell, because my whole life, everyone said I was lying. All the family would tell everyone, even when they finally realized that I was in the US and not living up in the bush with some man, as they were telling people that I ran away because because I was bad and all those things. It was, I always said, a lie, the gal them tell lie, the gal lie, the gal lie. That was always the situation. So I always said that one day when I write a book, I was going to call it A Lie Me I Tell, which is, the Jamaican thing. But then I just changed it to The Lies I Tell. That way, like, more people would understand the title. But that's the reason, because I'm sure if you go and you speak with them today, they're going to say, oh, I lie, all lies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted, so it's just, you know, that's the name and that's the title of it, but it also means their view on the whole situation and what they choose to tell people. So
yeah,
that's the story behind that.
so you're in a movement now, having, and I wonder too, as a matter of fact, before I go there, did your experience direct or guided your journey as it relates to the career you chose? Because I realize you work as you, and you've alluded to it so many times, you've worked with abused children, investigative arm for abused children, mental health. Did your experience stir how you chose your career?
Yes. So growing up in Jamaica, I have to tell you this, I always wanted to be a lawyer. After I graduated from Westwood High School and I went to my father and asked him to you know, begin that journey, he said to me, "Me nah spend my money upon you and another man come reap it."
Let me say
So,
it for you. Let me say it for you, because that doesn't sound like the patois. Me nah spend my money upon you for no other man come benefit, or no other man come take what me do. Yeah, yeah. So those of you who don't understand, that's a Jamaican, that's a patois.
absolutely.
But it's something,
Absolutely.
and we want to establish that this is one of the things that a lot of our children back then would have heard. Once you're finished with secondary school or high school, that was it. There was no extending you any further. There was no pushing you any further, because again, too, there was always this underlying thing that girls, and I'm going to use the patois again, girl go breed, right?
Yes.
And stuff. And that means, guys, so those who are listening and don't understand the patois, that the girl is going to get pregnant. And so it would be a waste of money. So what you find is that a number for girls or a number for women who were born in the late 60s, or well, between 60s, 70s, you
Yes.
find that they are not, unless they have since pushed to get themselves educated, they were never motivated or pushed or encouraged, or most of them, to say go find higher education. Because the belief was always that we take you this far, and that's for those of us who made it. Most did not make it out of high school or all age school, because usually they either get pregnant or, and circumstances push them into those kinds of things.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. So that's what I was told. So when I ended up coming to the US and getting myself together through God's grace and mercy, only for him, then I ended up making a decision. I realized I couldn't do law school. I just didn't have the money for it, but God works mysteriously. I told myself, you know, after I got my bachelor's degree, I always wanted to help children like myself. And I went to work in child welfare in New York City. I was a child protective specialist investigator, where I actually did investigations on children that were being abused. So I did that for like about 5 years. And then I discovered my passion, which is mental health. And my journey into mental health, really and truly, I tell everyone, started with me trying to understand my own messed up self, my own messed up family. So that's, you know, I studied, you know, I have a degree in behavioral science initially, because I wanted to study behaviors and learn about people, because that's what I was struggling with, even though on the outside, no one knew. So, and that's how I ended up in mental health. And then I ended up working in psychiatry for years. And it's amazing that I always tell people this, when you do assessments in psychiatry, there's a very common theme that you see. And it is molestation, sexual abuse, whether male or female. Very, very common in psychiatry. And you see the impact. And then when I look at that and I think about my life in particular, and realize that it's only through the grace of God that I'm functioning, it makes me really, really passionate about education when it comes to mental health, and people understanding the long-term impact of childhood trauma. You know, sexual abuse being one of them, and how it impacts people, and, you know, suicide. I've seen, you know, unfortunately for me, I have experienced people that I've worked with commit suicide. And, because some people get to the point that they just can't handle it anymore. They just, they try enough. And it's, I'm smiling, I'm happy. However, it takes a lot. For years, it took so much for me to get up and look at myself in the mirror and feel good about myself. I think I was watching an interview that you did with someone recently, and they were talking about their self-esteem, how it damages your self-esteem. Yeah. I never saw myself beautiful. I never saw, all I saw in the mirror was abuse that looked at me. Yeah. So, when it comes to mental health, and my passion with that is to let people be aware and learn coping techniques. Yeah. That's a big part of that. You never totally heal from it. And people, a lot of people will say, oh, Jesus, God, this, all that. And yes, we know all that. Yeah. But we're only human, and our mind constantly struggles with, trauma means a certain smell, a certain taste, something that someone does. Yeah. People don't even realize. And then all of a sudden, I'm back there again. And I tell this, I had to explain this to my sister. She just went to Jamaica recently. Yeah. And we had a conversation because she wants to know why I don't come back to Jamaica a lot. Yeah. And I had to explain to her, I'm sorry. Yeah. I had to explain to her, I said, do you realize every time I go to Jamaica and I return to the US, I come back more messed up than ever? Yeah. Because when I go back there's certain things that my mind blocked. But once I get there and I come back, they're back in my memory again. And I didn't even realize it was there. And then I'm at that place again where I'm praying to God, God, keep me safe. God, help me make it through this. So it's constantly struggle.
Marlene, have you gone through counseling since?
Yes, I have gone through counseling, and yes. Yeah. So counseling, it's the same thing again. You're taught techniques. Yeah. You're taught coping skills. Counseling does not solve your issues. And, I am a clinician. Yes. Mm-hmm. Maybe a lot of people, it benefits you because it teaches you how to cope. Yeah. It teaches you that when you're having these thoughts, it teaches you to stop those, replace it with something else, cognitive behavioral therapy. So there's different techniques that we utilize. Right. So it's, and I think a lot of people are quick to say counseling. And the reality is that you're taught coping techniques. Yeah. And you have to constantly utilize them.
Yeah. I asked because, like I said, I'm just hearing you, the pain still sounds so raw and fresh, as if it was yesterday, yes. And stuff. And I know, as I said, somebody watching this, I'm sure somebody's going to send me a message, say, hey, I can't watch this. It's still so painful. It brings back so much memories, that kind of thing and stuff. But we want them to be able to cope. And something you said, you're taught coping mechanism, because the truth is, it still is an action that you have to take. It still has to be a decision that you have to make, that I want to go past this, yes. Or I'm going to go past this. This is not going to hold me down, I'm going. Yes. So it still depends on the individual, the mentee deciding that I'm going to do this.
Yes, absolutely. That's the big part of it. And that's what you try to teach. You don't want people, you don't want us to stay in that role, because a lot of times when we've been there, I was one of those people, I speak to so many people, and like I said, promiscuity is a big thing for many of us that have been abused. Yes. I was one of the opposite, that I can't function sexually a lot of times. Yes. So there's certain things that happens to us when we go through this. A lot of people that are substance users. And they'll tell you, I use it to escape. Yes. Because they don't want these thoughts to come to their minds, and they don't know how to deal with it in a positive way. So it's learning positive techniques and coping skills. So that's the reason that professional help is very important when you've been, on my journey, and anyone else that's going through it right now. Yes. That's where it helps you, because you will learn coping techniques to utilize to help you get to the next level and not stay in that place where you are, that it impacts your ability to function. it impacts that you can't accomplish, goals. You can't set goals because you're stuck right there.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's so true. You are on a drive now, and I want you to share what's your goal now. And it's funny because you and I never got a chance to talk or anything of the sort. We just kind of dive in. But I feel that you're on, I don't know if you're on it as yet, but I feel like you should be on this journey of really trying. It's not professional now, meaning it's not your job. It's kind of more of your ministry, your purpose to reach girls, to reach hurting persons, that are in abusive relationships or have been abused. I don't know. What are you on now? What's your goal now?
So a part of what I've been doing for like the last year or so is promoting education on the awareness of, like I said, the long-term impact, and just ensuring that people know that if they're hurting, know to seek help. That's a part of it. Another big part of it is touching the Jamaican community, which I've done several interviews out of the Jamaican community and bringing awareness, that letting people understand that, trying to get some of the laws there changed where people are more accountable for their actions when it comes to child molestation. That's a part of it. I have been involved, I know, like, for some people, whether it may be controversial or not, but some people have been very outspoken, like Mr. Vegas, like he's been out there, get a lot of controversial talks because he's put this out there in the forefront where he's addressing that, Jamaican society has abusers that are just walking around and nothing is happening, no consequence is going on with that. I have also collaborated with the Jamaican, one of the teachers college in Jamaica, and just, trained their students, facilitated via Zoom because I can't travel much right now, but facilitated with them what to look for when you're working with children and get a better understanding that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what the socioeconomic status is of someone. You want to look for abuse. You want to look for these and make sure, you could be the one that's going to help someone from committing suicide or, all these mental health things that you will see, depression, you name them, that someone maybe experiences, like being aware and alert of all these things. And, I've been very fortunate that the Jamaican community, God has blessed a lot of people that have allowed me to do this, to share with this journey and share with them. And I think, a big part of it is educating the people that are working and doing these jobs and letting them just, be human.
Yeah.
And understanding and not be so judgmental when someone tells you their story, or that Jamaican thing that we do, say they're lying because it's such and such famous person that said that, that molested me or whatever it may be. So it's just being awareness. And unfortunately, the Jamaican culture itself needs an overhaul.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to be able to do that, but it needs a total overhaul when it comes to certain things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me congratulate you on taking this initiative. Yes, you're all the way over there in New York, but still remembering Yard. Yes, Yard reminds you of so much, but it's the fact that you are so mindful that there's still hurt here. There's still so many of our present day children that's still going through the same thing. How can persons help, Marlene? Persons listening, how can they help? Do you have an organization? Do you have an association? How can persons help? And if not, if you even don't have one, how can persons help to really and truly begin to, whether we're looking out for the signs or we're seeking ways to protect these children, or I don't know, what can we do?
So they have the various children organization in Jamaica that you're able to continue to make contributions to. That's a part of it. And also it's continuing with, the Jamaican education within itself. when it comes to the concept of child sexual abuse and child sexual trauma. There's also different laws that they're asking for people to sign. And that way it could have more accountability for like let's say, you know, someone, the sex offender registry in Jamaica, that's been a big thing. Like, you know, who is on the sex offender registry, who has access to it? That's also a very big thing in Jamaica. Not to say, the reality is that most of the people that are on that sex offender registry are not the ones who will continue to commit, because a lot of times they know that they already know them. But it's in your community that if, absolutely. So in your community, you do have those people that you know that are doing it. Jamaica has a hotline that you could make reports for child welfare. If you think that a child is being abused or so, you can make a report, especially during COVID. I saw the numbers out of Jamaica for like the last 2 years or so. And the impact that COVID has had on a lot of our children, not only children, but even the women who have had to stay home with abusers, that it's, you know, it's a pandemic within itself. So continue to make those phone calls and utilize those numbers. I think Jamaica is trying to go beyond what they were, you know, when I was growing up. By now, they're trying to offer some kind of child protection.
Right.
To go ahead and make those reports. And also in Jamaica, when it comes to reports, it needs to be an easier way to do it. Like it should be much, much easier for anyone to make a report. And those are the things that continuously come out of Jamaica and need to continue to be addressed. So all those people in Jamaica that are listening to it, just pay attention, just Google, and you'll see all the information in the petitions that need to be signed. Unfortunately, because I live here in the US, a lot of the petitions I'm unable to sign because it needs, you know, a Jamaican to actually begin those petitions and sign off on them. So please be mindful. That's how you can help children make those reports and protect them.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much for that, Marlene. I have been trying to get Sissoka. That's the organization that's responsible for child abuse and stuff within the Ministry of Justice and Ministry of National Security and Justice. And so I'm not going to stop until I've been able to get someone from Sissoka on this platform, because I remember even the case with Nicole Forrest. The question was asked, can she still at this age? I think she's 30 something now. Can a report still be made, you know, at this stage? Because sometimes they are really just looking for, I think it was Nicole who said, just somebody say, I'm sorry, you know, to say I'm sorry, or some form of something that will set them free finally after all these years.
Absolutely. So this was a question that I had looked into also. So, and there is someone too that actually took, I won't say her name, but she's also a very famous Jamaican female that lives in the US also. And she was able to take the person to court. And I talked with her about this. Hers was also a relative. And she brought it to my attention. She said that basically the Jamaican court system, the judicial system, did not encourage her to do this, meaning they gave her a very difficult time with, you know, when she was trying to do it, and everyone within the judicial system was telling her she needed to drop the case. So yes, so it's very, very challenging for you to even get these cases filed in the Jamaican court and the follow-up that's needed. So that's the reason that we said the judicial system within itself needs to be held more accountable. And also with the, you know, the young children that are there that are going through it, the system itself is not as supportive to those children.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Marlene, you know, we could continue talking for quite a long time. But definitely I'm, you know, as Uniquely Me continues, I'm really looking for, you know, all the ways that we could possibly lend our support in this area. And for the time being, I'll continue to allow this platform to air, you know, the struggles, the traumas, and to be a voice, for those who don't have a voice. I continue to do that as best as I can. Marlene, you've had your own set of experience. You've shared it here on the platform, but I want you to just give a word of advice to a girl that's your past self. She's you, but she's your past self. She's listening. And if you had the chance to speak to her, what would you say to her?
You're not alone in this. You're not alone, and it's not your fault. And speak to someone that you really trust. Speak to them about what's going on, and don't give in to your feelings that you're having. Unfortunately, a lot of times young people that are going through this think of death as a way out. I know that within myself, and I've heard it from so many others, that you basically, it's called suicidal ideations, that you think that's your only way out. It's not. It is not your only way out. There's people that can help you. There's organizations that can help you, and seek help. Just tell someone. And whatever the abuser tells you, it's not true. It's just their way of trying to control you. It is not true, because they're only telling you that because they know that what they're doing is wrong, and that they know that they can be held accountable for it. So it's just to create fear in you so that you could continue to do what they want.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for allowing yourself to be vulnerable and coming out and speaking out. Girl, if you were close, I'd give you a hug. You deserve it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's taken a lot of years for me to do this, and I so appreciate you allowing me to come on your platform and continue the good work that you do, because you're touching topics that so many people don't want to touch, or so many people are ashamed of talking about these things. And I so appreciate you, and God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what can I say? Another unique story. I'm yet to find a story that allows me to leave this platform smiling, laughing like I'm crazy. But because when I think about it, there's still so many that's going through what these women have gone through. But what gives me hope is that we still have a chance and an opportunity to help those who are either going through or help to prevent another woman, another girl to go through this. Let's make our voices heard. Let's say enough is enough. Put an end to child abuse. Put an end to domestic abuse. How can we do so? By making our voices heard, by not being ashamed, right? By being a supportive partner or an advocate, whichever way. Uniquely me, we have set out, I have committed myself to being an advocate, to being a voice for those who can't speak, by providing a platform for those who are brave enough to come and speak, and I'm going to hear it, and I'm going to support them as best as I can. If you want to help, Marlene has shared that let's reach out to the police. Let's make those calls, right? Let's do what we can. Let's do our part. Guess what? If you don't have a child, you may, or it might be your child, it might be your sister, it might be somebody that's dear to you who may just end up going through this, and you had an opportunity to stop it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been another episode of Uniquely Me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. And of course, I'm sure, reach out. If you have a word for Marlene, feel free to reach out to me. I'm only too happy to communicate what you have shared with her. All right, guys, I'll see you next week for another exciting, unique episode. Bye-bye.
And uniquely me is uniquely you.
Hi, guys. I thought I would share with you, for those of you looking for a Christmas gift or a New Year gift or a birthday gift, for that woman, that strong woman in your life, to offer the Uniquely Me Planner. Now, what can you find in the Uniquely Me Planner? You can find pages to write for each month. You have pages to write your goals, and we set it up so that those goals are smart, right? As you know, your goals need to be smart. So we have the specific, the measurable, the attainable, the relevant, and we put them in blocks so that you are able to fill them in accordingly. Also, you will find a daily to-do list, as well as for each day, if you need to put your calendar, what your calendar items will be, you have that as well. There's also a habit tracker, guys, or as well as a quote. There is a list for you to put what are your list of priorities in terms of things to be done. And of course, guys, we have pages and pages of that. We give you blank pages as well. So this is also, it is your diary, it's your planner, it's your time management tool is what I would call it. I want to encourage women who are creatives, women who are executives out there as well. You are trying to find a way to be productive. Here is your tool. And so guys, it's on Amazon. Just put in Uniquely Me Planner, or you can put in Simone Stewart and grab a copy of my Uniquely Me Planner. Guys, remember, Uniquely Me is uniquely you. Get your copy today.
And uniquely me is uniquely you.
Who am I really? Choices, choices, choices. In pursuit of a career? OMG, I'm a wife. Help, I am a mother. Oh, I'm in church. When do I get to be a woman that God called me to be? Uniquely Me covers the acrobatic endeavors of every woman to balance the responsibilities of being a mother, a wife, a professional, a church leader, a friend, yet still maintain her identity. I too am a mother, a wife, a trained minister of religion, a banker, an entrepreneur trying to balance the many hats that signifies my role. My book will help motivate and empower every woman who is really unique in her own way. Grab your copy today on Amazon, because Uniquely Me is uniquely you.
Thank you for tuning in to Uniquely Me with Simone Stewart. Remember, Uniquely Me is uniquely you.